It's my honor to introduce the last speaker with whom I have collaborated for almost 20 years. Dr. Cara Ebbeling is at Boston Children's Hospital, and her talk is Interventions for Sugar-Sweetened Beverage Consumption.
Okay, it's my distinct honor to be here. I want to thank the leadership of Norch for giving me the opportunity to participate in this symposium. And I thank the entire audience for staying until the last talk of the day. So hopefully it will be worth your time staying here today. So I've been charged with talking about interventions for sugar-sweetened beverage consumption. And I'd like to just start with a quote, something that I wrote a few years back that says, "An evidence-based approach to establishing dietary guidelines or providing medical nutrition therapy relies on reviewing and evaluating available data, determining the strength of inference drawn from the data, and integrating data with nutrition expertise, sound judgment, and perspectives of individuals for whom a recommendation, in this case to reduce sugar-sweetened beverages, may affect health." So that kind of provides a backdrop for my presentation today. I have no disclosures. So in terms of an overview, I'm going to start with a backdrop of a historical debate regarding the strength of the evidence base. And then I'm going to provide a vignette of a classic sort of example of a participant in our dietary research studies, just to lay like a background and to ground this in some reality, thinking about developing interventions. Then I'm going to go into a little bit of background, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this because having the privilege of being the final speaker of the day, a lot of this has been addressed in one way or another. But this is, again, put into context where we're coming from when developing interventions. For this background, we'll address several questions very briefly. And then I'll go into translating research to practice. We'll revisit the vignette, and then we'll consider some key questions for translation. Some of these questions were answered in a previously published manuscript, including the vignette. So, on with the introduction. Okay, there has been a debate that's been going on for about a decade now. And really the question is the evidence for an adverse effect of consuming sugar-sweetened beverages on body weight and adiposity sufficient to support public health guidelines to decrease consumption? Back in 2009, Dr. Allison and Mattis made a call for the rigorous randomized controlled trials on the topic. In this JAMA commentary, they said that the evidence for a causal relationship between consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages and obesity is imperfect. Randomized controlled trials of sugar-sweetened beverage consumption reduction have been applied effectiveness studies rather than rigorously controlled efficacy studies. Only the latter ensures fidelity of intervention. Then there also has been some debate on this whole issue of compensation that we've heard about in several of the talks today. And Dr. Allison notes that what we do not know, despite all the drama and vituperation surrounding sugar-sweetened beverages, is whether over extended periods of time people compensate any differently for liquid versus solid calories. So I realize that there's some differences in opinion on this, probably even in this room. It's not my intent today to resolve these issues, but just to present them as a backdrop as we consider the evidence base. Dr. Frank Hu, who spoke previously this morning, was part of a very interesting debate back in 2012 at the Obesity Society meeting, and he took the perspective that there is sufficient evidence. And in fact, he presented much of that evidence this morning, noting that sugar-sweetened beverages are currently the largest source of added sugar intake and the top source of daily energy in the U.S. diet, and noting that cumulative evidence from observational studies and experimental trials is sufficient to conclude that regular consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages causes weight gain, and these beverages are unique dietary contributors to obesity. Now, Dr. Allison in this debate argued the opposite perspective, again, calling for rigorous trials, but he also added, we are certainly not arguing against the common sense or prudent recommendation that for individuals who wish to lose weight and to presently drink large amounts of sugar-sweetened beverages, reducing intake of these and other sources of energy seems wise. And as was mentioned earlier today, the dietary guidelines recommend consuming less than 10% of calories per day from added sugar. Current intakes equate to about 270 kcals per day, or 13% of total energy in the U.S. population. Intakes as percent of energy are particularly high among children, adolescents, and young adults. And beverages, of course, are the major source of added sugars. So this brings me to the vignette, my other backdrop for the talk. So JD, and I got the JD from John Doe, not the star Red Sox player JD Martinez. So just to keep that clear, when I read this morning, I was like, oh, I hope nobody thinks I'm making a reference to a certain famous person in Boston. So anyway, JD is a 14-year-old boy who weighs 105.1 kilograms, 173.5 centimeters tall, and as such, his body mass index is almost 35, and thereby exceeds the 99th percentile for sex and age. He reports Hispanic ethnicity. Both of his parents are obese, but his only sister has a BMI at the 49th percentile. JD's fasting blood glucose is within normal limits, but his fasting insulin is elevated. His blood lipid profile indicates total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol within normal limits, but low HDL cholesterol and elevated triglycerides. His serum ALT is also slightly elevated. JD plays basketball 3 times per week in an after-school league at a community center. He reports a diet high in carbohydrate, mostly from refined sources, with adequate protein but minimal attention to vegetables and fruits. He also reports consuming a large glass of fruit punch for breakfast and his favorite brand of sport drinks when thirsty during basketball practice. All family members express the importance of health but are overwhelmed with changing their dietary habits. For those of you who are clinicians in the group, do pieces of this vignette ring true with some of what you've seen? Yes? Okay. Just making sure you're all still listening at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay. All right. So with that introduction, I want to move on to the background. And I do realize some of this will be a little bit of review, but we'll be talking the same language if I just go through it quickly. So the first question is, what are sugar-sweetened beverages? I'd like to start off by saying that they're soft drinks as opposed to hard drinks, alcoholic beverages, because I have to, in being transparent, I have to say when I first got into this field, I thought the soft referred to the carbonation, but it actually refers to the fact that they're not alcoholic. Carbonated beverages are termed sodas. And non-carbonated beverages include fruit drinks, sports drinks, energy drinks, enhanced waters, and highly sweetened coffees and teas. And I've decided to use clip art rather than to insert any particular brand name, but you can, I'm sure, think of the labels that go with any of these different beverages. They're sweetened with high fructose corn syrup, which is about 55% fructose, with the balance coming primarily from glucose and in the monomeric form, as indicated by these two diagrams. And then there's also sucrose in some beverages, which is 50% fructose and 50% glucose in dimeric form. Dr. Hugh also mentioned the amount of sugar in a classic 12 fluid ounce can of soda is 40 grams, or about 10 teaspoons, equating to about 160 calories. Sports drinks are probably one of the biggest successes of the industry in terms of marketing. For some reason, children running around on a soccer field for an hour or so think that they need to replace their electrolytes, which in fact they do not. And with those electrolytes also comes sugar. And Dr. Allison Field published data back in 2014, which Dr. Hugh mentioned earlier, showing a relationship with consumption of sports drinks and weight gain. And remember, JD in our vignette was drinking sports drinks during basketball practice. Energy drinks are another topic beyond the scope of this talk, but they are the drinks that contain stimulants, and with those stimulants, again, sugar. So these are some data published by Dr. Sarah Bleich in Obesity earlier this year. And I'm using these data to address the question, what sugar-sweetened beverages contribute the most to energy intake? Okay, so we have sodas, indicated by the dark bars, fruit drinks, sports drinks, low-calorie sugar-sweetened beverages, and other sugar-sweetened beverages. So you can see over this time frame, ranging from 2003 to 2004, the per capita consumption is trending down a little bit, but the vast majority of sugar-sweetened beverages, or I should say at least half of the sugar-sweetened beverages, are coming from sodas. And consumption is highest among Black, Mexican American, and non-Mexican Hispanic participants. Okay, next question. Does consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages contribute to weight gain? And Dr. Hugh presented a lot of data in this regard. I am just taking the meta-analysis that Dr. Allison and his team published around the time of the Obesity Society debate, just to make the point that indeed studies where sugary beverages have been increased in the diets of participants show that these participants gain more weight. So the answer to that question is yes. So the reverse side of the coin is, does reducing consumption have a beneficial effect on weight or weight loss? And Vasanti Malik has taken a look at this in a comprehensive meta-analysis as well. Once again, these data are published in this article. And they note that the day after the debate, which was September 21, 2012, 2 new RCTs were published. And Dr. Allison and his team said that these 2 new studies can be described as tilting the needle in the direction of demonstrating the obesity-reducing benefit of sugar-sweetened beverage reduction.